everyone. This is update for November 13, 2024, day 994 of the war, and of the date update. Also catch up for all of those days since November 7, which was a prior video. And I apologize for the delay. I had to deal with some personal problems, and so that was the cause for this delay. At the same time, not that much happened on the front line. The message is still the same. There is disaster is in the making in terms of Ukrainian defenses. So that didn't go away. There's a temporary pause. But before we move to the situation on the front line in Ukraine, I want to discuss sort of more geopolitical couple of updates. So first one is the outcome of the election in the US, where we all know Donald Trump is the new president, incoming president in the US. And I just want to reiterate that he received very broad and very strong mandate from the population to reform US as a country. And so far, all of his appointments point that he is extremely determined to make to deliver on his promises and to make the promised reforms in the US. At the same time, I want to mention that those people who were appointed so far, it's extremely primitive view to think of them as simple loyalists of the incoming US president. This is actually not the case. The best way to describe the situation is that all of the people who he so far appointed are extremely aligned in terms of their vision, principles, values with what Donald Trump was promising during his campaign. And all of these people are full of energy and eager to actually deliver. And I think that's another important part, is that he appears to be selecting people who are capable of executing, who it's not just talk, but they actually, as they say, walk the talk. And that's really creating a very, very strong team that is likely to deliver, or at least to attempt to deliver. The outcome is never guaranteed, but it's very, very clear that there will be attempt to implement reforms. However, there is one important consideration in this situation, is that if this is so, for example, let's take this war on conventional energy. So there is intent to sort of stop that war and so on. And that's gonna only work if it's not just done through executive decisions, because those are sort of presidential orders, and the new president comes, it can completely cancel them, which is exactly what happened actually with all of the executive orders of Donald Trump during his first term. New administration came, most of them were sort of canceled, or whatever you call it, and things were sort of changed 180 degrees. And so if it's again done through just this executive decisions, it's not going to work for business, because business cannot plan for 2 years. The horizon is decades, and so that's all of these promises are going to work only if they implemented through legislative process, because that's the only way that gives assurance to business, to everyone who sort of supports these changes, that they are long term, that this is not just a temporary fad. And I think that would be the biggest actual challenge, not so much reversing decisions of this outgoing administration, which I'm pretty sure is going to happen very quickly, and so on. But the problem is that this so-called revival is unlikely to happen because most participants or in this situation, they will not be eager to sort of jump on new promises simply because they realize in 4 years everything can be reversed 180 degrees, and you invest significant amount of money, and then you're going to be that those investments are going to turn into losses. So that's, I think, is going to be the biggest difficulty. At the same time, new incoming US president has control of both chambers of the parliament, which gives him actually opportunity to implement long-term changes through legislative branch of the government. So I think that would be the sort of key indicator in terms of if Trump administration is successful or not. And in terms of, I think there are a lot of sort of concerns with respect to position on Ukraine. My feeling is that I don't think there is a clear vision what to do in this conflict, because again, this is not conflict between Ukraine and Russia. This is conflict between West and alliance of at least 4 countries, including Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And it's just one of the tension places on this planet. And so I think this conflict is going to be sort of viewed from a perspective of big picture, what to do, how to address this situation. Another important point is that there will be significant influence from this new administration on Europe. So first of all, economically, because with the sort of new changes and sort of revival of conventional energy, reduction of bureaucratic regulations, this will, at least in theory, revive business climate in the US. And I mention this all the time about this death of manufacturing business that's happening in the US, and obviously the same is happening in Europe and generally in the West, with the exception of, as I stated before, South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. The rest of the West is manufacturing in the West is on decline. And so with sort of these new changes, this will accelerate problems in Europe for, in particular, let's say Germany and the rest of the Europe as well, because that will simply crater their economies, because they will become absolutely non-competitive if prices for energy go down significantly in the US, and due to deregulation also will go down. Simply European businesses are not going to be competitive, and that actually may lead to a situation where many European businesses will try to relocate to the US, which is not really happening right now. And it's just really Russian propaganda being pushed, but this actually may happen, and obviously it will completely crater European economies, and first of all Germany, which are already going into sort of depressive state anyways, or just because of their misguided policies. That's the best way, most diplomatic way I can describe it. And I think it's very, I'd say, it's a very interesting sign that German government fell apart, or the coalition that's running, German political coalition that's running, German government fell apart, and there will be new elections and so on, and essentially all this coalition will get wiped out. And that's completely coincided with the win of Donald Trump in the U.S. because German political the governing coalition is completely tied to the U.S., to the current administration in the U.S., and failure of one leads to the failure of the another one. It's like how to say, connected vessels essentially. In terms of potentially new administration that's coming in Germany, they actually might be more supportive and more decisive in terms of support for Ukraine, and definitely they don't seem to be pro-Russian. In terms of economic policies, that remains to be seen, because if they continue to push something similar, a little bit less aggressive, it's again will drive Germany into depression, and most of the Europe, for that matter. Now let's switch to one other topic I wanted to discuss. So we all know about Russia and North Korea. They effectively have they formalized their alliance, and that's actually the main important update, is that the alliance is sort of fully legal. It was vetted by both parliaments, signed by both presidents, whoever it is in North Korea. I don't know how it's called. And so at this point, actually, technically, it's possible that North Korean troops can participate in the fighting in Kursk region. It doesn't mean that they will, but this actually legally allows Russia to use North Korean troops, because from a formal perspective, and again, Russian president is absolute formalist and sort of so absolutely obsessively focused on legalism. And that's probably part of the sort of bureaucracy, because he's coming from bureaucratic class, administrative class. That's all he's seen all of his life, and he firmly believes in this sort of basically bureaucracy. And so going back to this, from a formal perspective, Ukrainian troops in Kursk region is invasion of Russia, and because the agreement calls for mutual military support in case of invasion, from that perspective, it's a fair game for North Korean troops to participate in the fighting in Ukraine, not in Ukraine, sorry, in Kursk region. So because that's going to be presented as, so allied power helping Russia defend itself, and it's fully legal, and that's not gonna essentially create much of the problems for Russia on the international in international affairs. Let's put this way, because it's going to be viewed as self-defense, actually. Now let's and so the only sort of problem is going to happen if North Korean troops are used on the front line in actually Ukraine. That's obviously the very different situation. But for Russia, it's going to be even enough if North Korean troops are used in Kursk region, because then they can redeploy Russian troops from Kursk region back into Ukraine and sort of give a little bit of boost for Russian attacks in Ukraine, because they little bit sort of, how to say, they running out of sort of resources and manpower, and they need sort of a little bit more firepower to continue. Okay, now let's walk through the front line in Ukraine in a clockwise fashion, starting from very north and actually from Kursk region of Russia. So things remain more or less the same. There is this fierce fighting going on around Novoivanovka. Russian command, Russian forces simply don't have enough resources to decisively destroy Ukrainian troops in this area, and also Ukrainian command is brought some reinforcements. So things somewhat in balance for now, and there is essentially balanced situation where the essence is Ukrainian forces lost some ground initially. Now situation stabilized, and so bringing in those North Korean troops may tilt situation again in Russia's favor, but which remains to be seen again. Now let's look at situation north of Kharkiv or northeast of Kharkiv. Things remain more or less the same. No major push in this area. Again, going back to the whole sort of strategic situation, is that Russian command does not have spare resources to use here, and a similar situation on the Ukrainian side. Now let's look at the situation on the North Lugansk front line. Things here obviously developing, generally speaking, in a negative direction for Ukrainian forces. Actually, Russian troops even managed to get in the part of the Kupiansk, or sort of eastern part of the Kupiansk, that are on the eastern bank of the Skill River. From the northeast, essentially, they managed to get on the outskirts of Kupiansk, and obviously that's not that's absolutely negative sign. But again, this is sort of, in quotes, normal situation now in terms of Ukrainian defenses, and Russian troops continuing to push here in terms of trying to move towards Borova. The push is basically towards Borova. At this point, it's unlikely that they're gonna will try to establish bridgehead on the western side of the Skill River, but anything is possible. They may just gonna create for the future one, just to have future opportunities. But the focus is very clearly to clear Ukrainian forces from the eastern side of Skill River to the north, basically around Kupiansk, eastern Kupiansk, and also moving south to Borova. That's sort of immediate objective that Russian command is executing here. Situation in the south somewhat stable, no major Russian advances there. Now let's look at the situation north Donbass front line. Things here actually more or less stable, especially in the northern sector. Again, goes back to this whole situation that Russian command does not have enough resources to attack everywhere, so they strategically selected few areas that they deem important, and that's actually not even sort of probably most correct description of the situation. It's, I would say, areas that Russian command deems important and where there is weakness on Ukrainian side, and so that's they try to hit into weakness basically. And then situation around Chasiv remains more or less the same, stable, no major Russian advances in this area. Now let's move to central Donbass front line, where things moving towards disastrous situation for Ukrainian forces. So first of all, Russian troops continuing advancing along this from Selidova towards Pokrovsk along this road. That's it's actually a highway that basically goes from Selidova to Pokrovsk. They, as you can see, they managed to gain more ground, and also Russian troops managed to, I would say at this point, probably almost capture this village Sontsevka, which gives them strategic opportunity to continue push to this intersection that I'm showing, and or to even Dachne. And essentially, at this point, it's becoming very, very, I would say, close to the situation where Ukrainian forces will simply have to evacuate Kurakhove, which they already lost parts, the eastern parts of Kurakhove. Also, Ukrainian forces on retreat here, sort of from south of Kurakhove to Spenivka. So essentially, there's the defensive line is basically formed by these two strongholds, Kurakhove and Spenivka, and there's essentially close to straight line between the two. The Russian pressure towards Rozlyv somewhat slowed down. I would say apparently there's some kind of regrouping going on, but the things stabilized in this area just for now. That's not a sort of permanent and sort of normal stabilization. It's just temporary stabilization, and it's probably partially what I said before, is that Ukrainian command, through all sorts of reinforcement from basically from the rear units, from basically everyone was thrown into the this hole to plug this hole with people, which is never a good idea, but it gave temporary reprieve. I think that's probably the best word to use in this situation. And so this is from the prior video, but I just want to explain that this is essentially the front line goes straight from Kurakhove along this road between Uspenikovo and Kurakhove, with exception that Russian troops managed to capture this village Dalne. And at this point, Sontsevka also captured. So as you can see, things essentially Kurakhove is done basically for Ukrainian forces. Now let's look at the situation on the Zaporizhya front line, and things starting to develop in a negative way. Actually, west of Velyka Novosilka, Russian troops resumed their pressure north of Pryutne, or northwest of Pryutne. They making some advances through the sort of fields, so it's really for now not much to show. But they apparently Russian command is thinking about creating applying the same strategy to capture Velyka Novosilka that they use essentially everywhere, including Kurakhove. Every single major town is basically captured by creating pincers on both sides, and essentially this is probably an attempt to create this pincers and capture eventually Velyka Novosilka. That's as immediate objective. What is actually interesting is this is actually the same area where Russian troops attempted to create southern pincer in summer of May through, let's say, August of 2022, where they tried to actually actually execute really much bigger operation of attacking from Izum towards south, and this was area from which they were moving north, attempting to move at least north to completely collapse Ukrainian defensive lines in Donbass Didn't work out at that time. Was the situation much worse for Ukrainian forces this time around. Now let's move to the final section of the front line along the Dnipro River, where things are completely quiet for obvious reasons. And I would say most of the units that you see here on the map probably at this point pulled by both sides into sort of respective areas where they see the most use for those. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Bye bye.